Hello, I'm Kimberley Hoeppner with the Tuesday edition of Alaska Weather. Today is January 23rd, 2018. In just a moment, we're going to be on to your aviation, marine, and public forecast. Remember, you can always get our information by dialing 1-800-472-0391 or simply going to weather.gov/Alaska and clicking on the destination of your choice. Now, let's head off to the maps of the day, and this is our satellite view. I first want to pull your attention over here to Kodiak Island, where they experienced an earthquake, which was 175 miles southeast of Kodiak City, so right in this vicinity here. This earthquake was approximately 12 miles deep and was a 7.9 magnitude. Now, this earthquake didn't have any reported major impacts. However, this was a slip straight kind of earthquake and didn't therefore have any major impacts. They do suggest, however, whenever there is an earthquake and there's a watch or a warning, always seek safety, and usually by going to higher ground. If you're in a coastal community, make sure that you find out your routes for the safest locations for you to go. Now let's take a look at the satellite map, and want to draw your attention out here to the west where there's a darker gray color, and this is a cold air mass that's circulating across the southern areas of the Bering. And this system is basically covering the southern half of the Bering with weak low pressure just to its north. Putting this into circulation, you can see this low doesn't have a lot of definition. However, over to the east, if you take a look at the southeastern areas of the state, we do have a large plume of moisture that's rotating around a low pressure system sitting mainly centered near the Dixon entrance. This area across the state, you cannot see too many clouds circulating in this location, but this is a very deep cold trough that's over the state and extending into the southern areas of the Gulf. Taking a look at the surface, here's what we've got. We've got a weak low pressure system at the surface all across the state with weak boundaries, brings some light snowfall, mainly for the eastern corridor of the state. And we did have some snow across south central down through the Cook Inlet earlier today, but mainly that is tapered off with some light snow showers moving up into the Susitna Valley. And then we do have a few ongoing showers on the backside of this low pressure system across the central areas of the Gulf. Now, ahead of this low pressure system, currently there's some light rain showers across the eastern Gulf, and it's all the precipitation has dissipated across the southeast at this time. Snow averages were between 2 to 4 inches across the south central locations and across the southeast, with higher amounts across the Turnagain Arm area, reporting up to 10 inches over at Girdwood. Now let's take a look at your weather for tonight. We have this low pressure system in the southeast that's going to be slowly moving to the north. This is going to be pushing the boundary up to about the Dixon entrance, so expect some light mix of snow and rain. Closer to the Ketchikan and Annette area will be mainly rain showers, so you might see a few flakes, but we're not expecting any accumulations in this area. Now this snow will just start falling towards Juneau during the overnight hours, but we're not expecting much to get in really until Wednesday. Do, however, look out with this gradient being tightly packed across the southeast over towards the western areas of the Gulf. We will get an offshore flow component, which will bring stronger northerly flow between 15 to 30 miles per hour with higher gusts up to 40 to 45 miles per hour. We also have a tighter gradient across the Alaska Peninsula, so they'll be seeing a stronger northerly flow between 20 to 35 miles per hour. Now across the northern tier of the state, mainly just light snow shower activity with patchy fog developing across the north coast down towards the Brooks Range. with, of course, very cold temperatures, and we'll talk about that in a few moments. Now, across the eastern areas of the Bering, weak low pressure will continue to bring some light snow shower activity as we have upper level waves moving around, and this boundary between the high and low pressure systems, we will see that ongoing snow shower activity. Mainly dry across the western waters of the Bering, with ridge continuing to deepen into your Wednesday. So staying quiet out in those locations, slightly warmer with a warm front just pushing to the western Bering there, and those temperatures will probably range in the 35 to 40 degrees temperatures for Wednesday. Now across the Gulf, expect that strong offshore flow to produce some storm force winds there through the Marines at the tip of the Kenai. So strongest flow will be across the western areas of the Gulf tomorrow, and then we'll also see some strong offshore flow, especially through channel terrain along the coastal communities. We'll see that low pressure system moving up towards Juneau and bring some light accumulations between 1 to 2 inches, and again, only a mix of rain and snow there for the southern areas towards the Dixon entrance. So expect no accumulations of snow for Ketchikan, Oronet, and Sitka. Now across the eastern areas of the state, once again, we are going to see snow shower activity all the way up to the northeastern Beaufort seacoast. We'll see some fog develop or continue to develop across the northwest coastal locations. Low pressure system will stay in place across the eastern Bering, bringing some strong gusty flow also across the eastern waters, with some gustier flow across the Alaska Peninsula, up to 40 to 45 miles per hour. Now across the Bering, we'll see another quiet day with some clouds rotating around the outside areas of this high pressure system, and stronger southerly flow just creeping closer to Shemya and bring warmer air mass to the area. Now, as we head into your day on Thursday, expect not much of a pattern change. And a matter of fact, we'll have ridge rebuilding just to the north of the ridge that's in the southern Bering. So ridge is definitely going to be the dominant force across the central Bering, with low pressure staying in place across the Gulf. With these two pressure systems in place, we're going to see a tighter gradient with a colder air forcing on the backside of this low pressure system, bring that cold air flow to continue across the southwest as we head through the day on Thursday. Shower activity will remain across the Alaska Peninsula, and we'll see lighter snow and rain showers for the southeast on Thursday. This low pressure system is going to be setting up just to the east of the Kenai, and that's going to bring some colder air just towards the eastern water. So we'll get a new boundary as this low pressure system shifts and reforms, with the air forcing off the mainland and back around this low pressure system. So basically reinforced with light snow showers and cold staying across the interior, and the north continuing to see some foggy conditions. Not much change is going to be occurring through the day on Thursday, so look for the coldest days of the week essentially to be Wednesday and Thursday, with temperature extremes getting to 40 to 60 degrees below zero, especially for the upper and lower Koyukuk valleys. We'll head into temperatures. Right now, we're going to move on to the Wednesday morning temperatures. Here's the coldest area of the state that I was mentioning just a moment ago, basically ranging between 35 to 45 degrees, but there's always those cold pockets that aren't always picked up by this, so expect slightly colder temperatures across the Koyukuk valleys. Now across the southeast, expect temperatures primarily to be in the mid-20s to just about 32 degrees as you head down towards Ketchikan and Annette. Across the south central area, temperatures will range from this lower single digits to the about a teens below. And then across the northern tier of the state, slightly warmer than the interior, with temperatures between 20 below to 30 below, and then across the southwest between 4 and 15 below. Across the Alaska Peninsula, near freezing or just below, and slightly warmer out towards Shemya, where they're going to see temperature trends a little bit warmer for your Wednesday afternoon. Here's your Wednesday afternoon, 41 degrees for Shemya, and across all of the Bering, you'll see that trend get a little bit colder towards that southwest coast, with temperatures along the southwest coast 5 to 10 degrees on Wednesday. Across the southeast, in the mid-20s to mid-30s, ranging back to 10 to 20 degrees for South Central and Kodiak Island. Across the interior, temperatures only warm to 20 to 30 below. That's strange to say warming, and that is warming for those locations. Across the north and northwest, temperatures will be reaching into the 10 to 20 degree range. For your Thursday morning, stay with me here as we get to Thursday morning. Expect temperatures for low temperatures to be very similar to Wednesday. Temperatures ranging between 35 to 45 below zero, with the slightly warmer temperatures along the north and northwest between 10 to 20 below, and slightly colder temperatures should be noted on your Thursday morning across the southwest. They will be getting a little bit more of a surge from that cold air mass, making it down to the Alaska Peninsula in the 20 to 30 degree ranges. Now across the area of the western Bering, a little bit colder as that warm front gets pushed back a little bit, so down to 32 degrees for Thursday morning. The southeast will see temperatures ranging yet again in the 15 to 30 degree ranges, slightly warmer to the south. Now as we head into the afternoon, temperature ranges will only increase slightly for the southeast, and for South Central, a cold day, temperatures near steady through the afternoon. Coldest temperatures will be noted across the central interior, with temperatures still in the 10 to 20 below range for the northwest and west coast. Now across the western areas of the Alaska Peninsula, slight warming there towards the Dutch Harbor in the mid-30s.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Hello, and now we're on to your aviation section for tomorrow, Wednesday. We're expecting most of the state to be in VFR conditions. However, we do have MVFR conditions across the northern coast and across also the interior and eastern interior, mostly down towards the Cook Inlet here, and IFR and MVFR conditions across most of the Gulf waters, and including MVFR conditions across the southeast and inner channels there. Now, back out across the western areas of the state, MVFR conditions will be across the Alaska Peninsula and much of the eastern areas of the Bering. Look for IFR conditions also across the eastern Bering. For the afternoon hours on Wednesday, looking at IFR conditions creeping in there to the western Aleutians, western waters. Not much change across the Alaska Peninsula and north. For the interior, looking at conditions persisting for your Wednesday afternoon, and conditions for MVFR will also be quite expansive across the Gulf of Alaska. During Thursday morning, expect IFR conditions out there across the Gulf, with widespread MVFR for the southeast extending up into the Alaska range there. However, conditions across Cook Inlet and near Kodiak will improve. We will see a large area of MVFR conditions back towards the Brooks Range and the northwest coast, and looking at conditions persisting for the eastern areas of the Bering, with expansive IFR conditions, including the Pribilof Islands out there. For your Thursday afternoon, not much improvement for the Bering locations, with MVFR conditions staying across the Alaska Peninsula. Looking at the eastern areas of the Gulf, we will see some IFR conditions up there in the Panhandle, and we'll also see IFR conditions persisting across eastern areas of the state and the interior. Now let's take a look at your passes in more depth. We have Anahtuvik, and both Adigan will be VFR for the day, and we'll also see the Southwest Lake Clark and Merrill Pass VFR, as well as Rainy Pass. Looking at conditions to be MVFR across Windy, and we'll see MVFR conditions across Isabel and also for Mentasta. Looking at Tanita, they should go from MVFR to VFR late day. And we'll see Portage, mainly VFR conditions, with MVFR conditions across the western entrance, possibly going to VFR during the afternoon. And then we'll see Chilkoot and White Pass go from VFR to MVFR later in the day. And we'll see freezing levels for Wednesday morning. The surface is going to be draped across the central areas of the Bering, back across the Alaska Peninsula, and then we'll see it hug the northern coast. For the height rises, only a 2,000-foot freezing level down there towards the Dixon entrance. Elsewhere, it's going to be 1,000-foot or below for your morning freezing levels. Looking at your icing, some light icing is possible across much of the Bering, and that's going to be below 8,000 feet. And then for the eastern areas of the state, below 3,000, across the interior, and then across the Gulf, mainly below 6,000 feet. And this is just going to be for light icing. Now let's take a look at the upper level jet stream. That's going to be in an amplified pattern with low pressure, a large trough across the Gulf of Alaska with another secondary center just across the northern tier of the state. So that's a really deep low pressure system with a ridge pattern over the Bering, 100-knot jet across there with a speed maxima of 130 knots just south of the trough there. Now let's take a look at the 9,000-foot map. We'll see a low pressure center here centered across the southern tier of the state with another low pressure towards the Dixon entrance, a strong northwesterly flow in between low pressure there across the state and with a ridging to the west. We're going to see between 40 to 60 knot winds there at 9,000 feet. And we'll see around the ridge, we'll also see some stronger winds between 30 to 50 knots. Looking at your Wednesday, we're going to see at 3,000 feet, a very similar pattern with the ridge right near Adak and Atka. We'll see the strongest winds again across the Alaska Peninsula between 35 to 40 knots. Look across the northwest coast will be some stronger flow, 20 to 25 knots. And then across the interior areas of the state, mainly between 5 to 15 knots, variable flow up into about the northern areas of the Panhandle. A little bit stronger winds across the low pressure that's near the Dixon entrance with some gusty easterly winds around 30 knots. Just to sum up the turbulence for tomorrow, below 4,000 feet around that low pressure system, and then across much of the southern tier of the state as offshore flow develops between the high pressure and low pressure. Now in just a moment, we'll be on with your marine forecast.
Some people think that to be a professional pilot, you have to make your living flying. Well, there's another way to define professional. A professional pilot is a pilot who knows and understands the fundamentals of operating his or her aircraft both in the air and on the ground. And the second mark of a professional is a desire to always be better. Not just to be a good pilot, but to constantly improve our skills and techniques until we are better pilots. And that's what we're about here today, to review the fundamentals that will make us better pilots as we operate on the runways and taxiways of our airports. In many ways, it takes more knowledge and skill than it takes to fly. So, let's review. Always look, listen, and expect the unexpected.
Know where you are and where you are going.
Study the airport diagram before taxiing.
Write down taxi instructions.
Conduct checklists while stopped, not on the move.
Off, off, off.
Be absolutely familiar with airport signs.
Keep a sterile cockpit to reduce distractions while taxiing.
Identify complex intersections and potential runway crossings.
Look both ways before crossing intersecting taxiways or runways.
When communicating with air traffic control, listen before transmitting.
Cessna 3284 Delta, hold short of runway 19 left.
Listen to what air traffic control is saying to other pilots.
15 Niner Echo Charlie 130 cleared to land. Traffic holding in position.
Be sure you understand all air traffic control instructions.
Cessna 594 base turn approved. Runway 25 left, clear to land.
Ask for progressive taxi instructions if confused.
Could you give me progressive taxi instructions?
Cessna 3284 Delta, Merrill Ground, runway 26 right, taxi via Gulf, hold short of runway 26 left.
Don't be afraid to ask that an instruction be repeated.
Ground 3284 Delta, say again.
If you don't know, ask. If you're not sure, verify.
Squawk 7302.
Read back all hold short, position and hold, and runway crossing instructions. A simple Roger won't do. Repeat the entire instruction.
Cessna 3 Sierra Papa. Cross runway 19 left, position and hold runway 19 right.
453 Sierra Papa, crossing runway 19 left, and position and hold runway 19 right.
Turn on all of your lights when crossing a runway. Turn on all of your lights except landing lights when taxiing into position and hold. Turn on your landing lights when cleared for takeoff. This is a signal to other pilots, air traffic control, and ground personnel that your aircraft is moving down the runway for takeoff.
When lining up for departure at night, line up 3 feet to one side of the center line to distinguish your aircraft lights from the runway lights.
Avoid distractions. Observe what's going on around you. Always know where you are and where you're going.
If you and I observe these few common sense rules and procedures, it will go a long way toward making the runways and taxiways of our airport safer. For our passengers, our fellow pilots, and ourselves. Heads up, hold short, fly right.
Hello, I'm Bill Davis, Director of the Office of Runway Safety for the FAA. As a fellow aviator, I hope you enjoyed reviewing runway safety from such an exciting perspective. Our thanks to Patty for showing us that attention to safety really does begin well before we climb into our airplanes. Preventing runway collisions is our #1 goal. We can accomplish this goal if we're all committed to improving our skills while operating on runways and taxiways. Thanks again to Patty Wagg's staff. We wish you blue skies and safe landings.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
It's now time for your sea ice and marine weather. Let's take a look at the ice edge, and that is across the eastern areas of the Bering here, and we're going to see northerly flow continue to help this sea ice edge grow further to the south as we head into the next few days. Not much coverage has changed across the Cook Inlet, but we're expecting that ice area to grow to the south as well. Now let's take a look at the southeast, and we're primarily looking at that strong northerly flow across the northern channels there, approximately 40 knots, so gale criteria, with some gusty air flow becoming more of a southeasterly flow as you head towards the south there, and an offshore component, 25 knots, mainly a small craft advisory for the outer waters, and we'll see seas between 4 to 10 feet across the inner channels, and then we'll see between 7 to 11 feet across the outer waters. Let's take a look at your Thursday forecast. We'll keep that offshore component towards the north there, changing to the southeast. Small craft, however, on this day. And then we'll see slightly weaker winds across the outer waters between 15 to 25 knots on your Thursday. Your seas on this day will be between 2 to 5 feet across the inner waters and between 8 to 11 feet across the outer waters. Now, your Wednesday forecast across the western areas of the Gulf of Alaska are going to be a little bit trickier, as we are going to see some 40-knot winds coming offshore here, and we'll see some very high seas between 14 to 19 feet, stronger gusts in this location, and we'll also see offshore components to the north with gusts to 40 across the northern Gulf waters, and across the eastern Kenai, winds will be coming out of the north at 35 knots. So look for a small craft to gale criteria across much of the area, with a weaker wind speeds across the Cook Inlet between 10 to 15 knots out of the north and east direction as well. Now let's take a look at Thursday. We'll see very strong winds, storm force across the waters just south of the Kenai, and we'll see slightly stronger winds as well for much of the Gulf with stronger gusts between 30 to 35 knots. So be aware of that. Stronger winds across Prince William Sound on Thursday, and then a northerly flow across the area to northwest for the western areas of the Gulf. We'll see seas on this day between 6 to 16 feet across the Gulf waters and 17 feet there across the southern tip of the Kenai. Across the Prince William Sound, 4 feet. The northern inlet will be 2 to 5 feet as you head to the south. Let's take a look at the Alaska Peninsula. Strong flow out in this direction. We're going to see some gale criteria there between 35 to 40 knots and slightly less winds towards Bristol Bay out of the north at 15 knots. 30 knots for the Alaska Peninsula. We'll see seas on the Bering side 3 to 9 feet, higher seas between 8 to 11 feet across the Pacific side. On Thursday, expect sustained strong winds for gale criteria, slightly stronger wind speeds there across Bristol Bay around 25 knots and seas a little bit higher, 5 to 8 feet across the Bering and between 8 to 12 feet across the Pacific side. Now looking at Wednesday, looking at winds change of direction northwesterly to more of a southerly component out towards the western Aleutians. Seas on this day will be between 8 to 16 feet with slightly lower seas across that high pressure ridge that's in the central Aleutians. Change of wind direction around this area will vary. And as we head into your Thursday, that variable wind will stay fairly light, 10 to 15 knots, with more of a northwesterly component towards the eastern Aleutians. Out towards the west, a little bit more of a strong southerly flow in that direction, 35 knots, gale criteria, with higher seas on that day, 18 feet out towards the western Aleutians, and between 4 to 10 feet across the eastern and central Aleutians. Looking at your west coast forecast, strong northerly flow will be primarily over the eastern Bering waters and central locations out of the northwest at 25 knots and then 5 to 20 knots elsewhere out of the north and east directions. As we head into your Thursday, slightly stronger winds. However, staying under small craft criteria, seas on this day will be between 2 to 8 feet, highest seas out towards the central waters. Now on your Wednesday forecast, expect a northerly flow, 10 to 15 knots, more of a westerly flow across the eastern Beaufort Sea coast. All ice on these days. Thursday with a northerly flow across the area. Recap your forecast. The main focus is going to be on low pressure across the southeast, moving towards the north, bring rain and snow, with snow continuing through the week as we head into your Thursday and cold temperatures to ensue. Have a great night.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.